Hello and welcome along to The Score. On this week's episode, we're delving into the world of refereeing. Match officials are often spoken about, but how well do we understand the challenges that they face, or dare I say, at times, the laws of the game? What makes someone want to become a referee, and what does that journey even look like? You've also been kindly sending in some of your own questions. We will attempt to answer those a little later on in this podcast. But before we do any of that, let's first meet our guests who are here to offer an insight into what they do and all of what I've just talked about and more. We have the head of refereeing for the Irish Football Association, Mike Riley. Mike, great to be talking to you.
And you as well, Michael.
And we also have a barrier breaking referee, as she's been described, and you'll understand why when you hear her story. It's Louise Thompson. Louise, how are you?
Good, Michael.
Great to have you both on. Before we get into all the nuts and bolts of refereeing, how are we finding things at the moment? Are we enjoying our football? We're in the thick of it now, aren't we? Really coming into the festive period.
It's probably the most exciting part of the year for anyone involved in football, particularly Northern Ireland with the Boxing Day games coming up. And I think everyone, after last weekend's washout, everyone's keen to get back out on the pitch and play and referee. It's good times ahead.
And what about for you, Louise? Do you find that as well? Is this a time of year that even referees get excited for?
Yes, definitely. We've just slowing down internationally at the moment, also after a busy season. But as Mike just said, it's great to have so many games around Christmas and a busy schedule to look forward to.
Mike, is everybody in the refereeing fraternity now? Are they almost like I don't know, impatient children? Are they all texting you saying, "You know what game I'd really like," or does that not happen?
Well, I think we all know what games everyone would like. And that's the good thing about refereeing, because whilst it's a really good community spirit amongst everyone, at the same time, people are competing to try and get the games that they want each weekend. And that's what keeps the standards high.
Yeah, well, I like to hear that. That's an interesting admission that there is a competitive side to it because why wouldn't there be? We'll get into that in a little bit. Just on Storm Dara, could we? Everyone's talking about learning lessons in the aftermath of what happened, which was a pile of games looking like they were going to go ahead and then very late in the day not happening in several instances. Is there anything that we could do to make it easier from a refereeing perspective? Should this be put on match officials or could a decision be taken elsewhere sooner?
It's really difficult with weather, and it always has been throughout my career because you can never really know whether a forecast the day before is actually going to come true the day after and to what extent. So you're trying to judge in refereeing terms the state of the pitch, but more broadly the safety of everyone going to the game as well. I think the Storm Dara really hit at the safety of travelling as much as the condition of the fields. But even then, you got to some really specific circumstances about the gusts of wind. At one time, it was making playing almost impossible, but that for the next 2 or 3 minutes, it was fine. And then came along the next gust of wind. So I think there is quite a bit we can learn about it. But wherever you get weather involved, it's always really difficult.
One of the suggestions that I heard mentioned elsewhere was if there's an amber or a red warning, is a decision just made then so that match officials, like fans, like players, like everybody, aren't traveling to a game and trying to become meteorologists?
Yeah, and I think last weekend probably demonstrates how that could work. So if you take Wales, for example, they had a red warning across the country. So it took the decision not to go ahead with the games. I think we were at amber, weren't we? Which is right on the cusp. I think had it been red, it would have been an easier decision. But definitely taking that meteorological advice and into account in general safety terms is important.
And being in that position as a ref, going into a game where you realise or you determine for safety reasons this match can't proceed, you end up kind of feeling like the Grinch, don't you? You have to go and all of a sudden start informing people the thing you're here for isn't happening, which I can't imagine is a particularly nice experience because presumably you want to work too.
Well, I've not done that for a long time. At the risk of calling her a Grinch, I'll let Louise answer that one.
Yeah, it's not a easy decision to make, and when you've got everyone at the ground and everyone's ready for a game, teams are prepared, fans were pretty much almost there, and officials are there also. Yeah, it's one of the most difficult decisions to make. Everyone's on your back. Some wanted to go ahead, some don't. You're caught in the middle, to be honest.
And that was an interesting thing that came out of the weekend that's just passed as well. That, if managers don't agree, you're really kind of put in a position then, aren't you?
Yeah, you're just really going for ultimate safety has to be your number one priority for everyone. Um, Match officials, teams, and supporters. So it really has to be taken into consideration.
Okay, well, enough about storms. Hopefully, I don't think we're going to have too many sunny skies between now and January, but hopefully less stormy occasions, both metaphorically and literally. In terms of your respective journeys. Mike, if I can talk about yours as the head of refereeing, obviously we know a lot about your career, starting off in the Football League. I had to double take it. That's 1994. You became a bona fide referee after serving as an assistant. I won't tell you what age I was in 1994. I'm not that unkind, Mike, but take us back to those early years and what it was like getting involved, first of all, and what made you want to do this?
I can go back even further just to show all that. So I started refereeing when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
There aren't many referees who come to it through a complete love of football, and that's true of me. But thankfully, I realised really in my playing days that I wasn't actually very good. I think the day I picked the 17th goal out of the back of my net, I realised probably I wasn't going to be a world-class goalkeeper. But refereeing was the next best thing. It got you out there involved in the games, got you part of the matches going on, and then you work your way up through the system. So in '94, I made it to the Football League referees list. I did 2 years there before joining the Premier League referees list. And that opens up a whole different range of possibilities for you. But it's fantastic, whatever level you're out there, taking to the field with a whistle, being part of the 22 players' enjoyment of that game. And if you've ambition about it, and this is particularly true of us in Northern Ireland at the moment, it can be a referee, be part of that journey. And the opportunities out there for you in the men's game and in the women's game are just phenomenal at the minute. So come do it.
When did you realize that you were actually doing pretty well? Are there people giving you feedback along the way? I appreciate things might have changed, and we can discuss that too in terms of what the mechanisms are around of appraising officials. But just from your own experience, what was that like?
Yeah, no, I mean, I started refereeing in Rotherham, and we had two senior referees there. One of whom was a Football League referee at the time, a guy called John Key,
Mm.
and they looked after me my early stage of career. Came to watch me on Sunday mornings on the local parks in the wind and rain, offered words of encouragement and some sage advice at the time. And that keeps you motivated, it keeps you interested, and it helps you to develop. And gradually you realise that you get better quality games, you move up through the leagues, or through the divisions first of all, then the leagues, and you get that sense of reward for all the effort that you're putting in. And that keeps you motivated. Then at some point you realise that actually something like the Football League is a realistic ambition. So you work hard to try and get there.
You make it sound very easy. I'm sure it wasn't.
Oh, no, no. Many, many challenges along the way.
And Louise, for you, you had a pretty good playing career, I have to say. So people always talk about going from being a player to a referee. Do you think that helped you?
100%. Yeah. I fully think that's helped just for things like understanding the game, knowing when players are frustrated or things like that, or when it's genuine, just other things. But yeah, you get to read the game as well. I think really, really helps. Just having that just general game understanding. Sometimes even just seeing the way teams are playing, their tactics and stuff, you can see things like that as well. I think which can really ultimately help you.
I'm guessing in terms of where you need to be on the pitch.
Yeah, 100%. First few games when you're trying to stay out of position where you should be as a player and try and stay where you should be as a referee, so you're not getting in the way. That switch is quite hard mentally, to be honest. But you get used to it. You have to get used to it, or otherwise you're in the way. But yeah, no, it's good that way.
For anyone that isn't aware of your playing career, tell us briefly a little bit about that, and also when the light bulb went on in your head that after playing there was refereeing, because it's not a journey that too many people take.
No, definitely not a journey people take or possibly even think about. To be honest, yeah. So I started playing officially with the club when I was 14, because that was the youngest age you could start playing here. But I would have joined much earlier if I could, because I've been playing and been interested in football forever, basically. Started playing then, and we were in the women's premiership for a good number of seasons, so got plenty of experience in League Cup finals and stuff like that also. So it's great to have that experience behind you. Kept playing until unfortunately I got a knee injury when I was 27. So that was when I had to start thinking about other options. Thankfully, locally here, there was a referees course for females, and I signed up. Don't know what made me sign up. I signed up and I haven't looked back since, to be honest. Once I was able to run again after my knee injury, I got on the pitch. I remember starting at, I think it was an under 13 game quite locally here, and I think it was probably the most nervous person on the pitch, if I'm being honest. But I never looked back, and the progression and the opportunities, as we previously spoke about, has been surreal. Great experiences, experiences that you learn from also, but fantastic.
And I alluded to at the very beginning, the headline of, groundbreaking referee. I don't know whether you cringe at all that sort of stuff, but it's a real achievement because you have so many firsts already to your name, and to be, I guess, showing other women and other young girls that pathway is there for them as well in what is a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, that's really what you want to show, is that this can happen. If you want to go for it, honestly, it is fantastic. Breaking barriers and just being there, I think just showing your face, being that role model if possible. But yeah, being the first. Okay, at the moment I just do it. I don't really think about that sort of thing, but maybe when you look back on it, maybe like 15, 20 years time, you'll go, okay, that was maybe setting pathways for the next people that want to come along and be female referees in the male game or any part of the game, which will be great to see, and hopefully we can really, really get a good drive from that.
I don't mean the old mindsets, but do you still occasionally get men that kind of go, that's a woman referee, like as if you're an alien?
Yes, you do hear the odd comment. Yeah, you do.
Because does that get any easier? I can't imagine how that would feel at times, especially at the beginning. It's probably quite unnerving.
At the beginning, yeah, but you have to learn to not let that affect you and just deal with it in your own way. Okay, at the start, maybe it would be in your head a little for a while, but once you just blow the whistle, start the game, I think you just really forget about that and you just concentrate what you're there to do.
And how much is it than being a footballer?
Oh, so different. Training on your own, going to matches on your own, being in the change room on your own. It's so lonely the first few games when you are on your own. And then when you start to have, assistants and stuff with you, it's you're more of a team then. But definitely you have to be so much more self-motivated, especially for training. It's cold and wet and windy, and the last thing you want to do is go out and do your training session, but you have to.
And where was the big break for you? When was the opportunity that you went from someone that's kind of dabbling in refereeing, having taken a course, to someone that's seriously now pursuing a career in refereeing?
I'd honestly say September 2018 for me was the biggest month, because I had been refereeing just less than a year, and I got to do the Women's Irish Cup final at Windsor Park, and in the it was Glentoran against Lindsay. So that was just phenomenal, the whole experience of it. And then also that month, I got to do home fourth official for an international game. If I remember correctly, it was Northern Ireland against Slovenia at Portadown. And it was what the referee observer said to me, that she was from England, and what she said after that game about how you can make a career out of it. I think that's when light bulbs started to come on, and just really wanted to pursue it then. That was a big month, I would say.
See, that's really nice to hear about positive feedback because often when we think of observers, we think of people being marked down as opposed to actually being positively appraised. So there are nice observers as well.
Oh yes, oh yes, there are. There sure are. Yeah, it's nice when you hear the nice comments as well, because it is obviously very easy to, you know, give the more critiques and stuff, but when you hear the positive stuff, that really helps also.
Mike, it's human nature, isn't it? Even if we're fed three positives, we'll hear that one negative and it'll reverberate potentially for quite a long time. Do you have any tricks along the way for how you dealt with that? Because in packed stadiums in front of tens of thousands of people who are playing for the Premier League title, I would imagine it could be pretty stressful.
It's really interesting, but and it's common to most people coming to refereeing. You have that psyche that you do hear all the criticism first because that's the thing that you want to put right and make yourself better next game. And one of the good things about the way you developed as a referee is you put in environments that test you. Um, Going from one man and the dog on a local Sunday morning pitch over here, that you hear every comment that's made about you, through to the time that you first entered sort of semi-professional football, you got crowds of 200, 300, and you hear the chants then rather than individual comments, through to refereeing in front of 10,000, 15,000 and upwards. So your experience and the colleagues around you help you adapt to that sort of environment. And deep down, if we're honest, we like going into those environments. We like being tested by the atmosphere. And there's no greater buzz than walking out with a flag or the ball under your arm into an arena like that, being part of the great game. It's a fantastic experience, and it actually drives you on and motivates you rather than the other way around.
And so the panto villain stuff, I know you have to develop a thick skin, but surely it permeates the odd time. You kind of go, oh, I think they're calling me a rather unkind word here. What's that song?
I think I've lost count of the number of times I've been stood on the pitch and smiled wryly because you can't show it when they start singing the usual chants.
And the personalities and the characters, and I'm interested to hear about Louise having played with people and then officiating them. That's an interesting dynamic. But when you're like refereeing megastars of world football, how how do you manage that? Because there's big personalities who, as you know, try to referee games for you.
But I think that's true at any level. I always remember the first time we did a game at sort of semi-professional level, and I walked out onto the pitch, and just in the training before the game, you could see the characters on each team, and you knew the ones who were going to try and challenge you during the match, and actually who were going to try and referee the game for you. And that's part of football. And as you move through to professional football, the characters are the same. Maybe the profile of them is different, but fundamentally they're still people. And you have a role as a referee to try and control that game of football. The players have a role to go out there and try and win the game. And you're all trying to do the same things to make it a better game of football.
It's really interesting. So you might know who to expect it from because they are higher profile, but you actually think when it comes down to it, there's only so many types of personalities humans can have anyway.
It's true. And within the team, you've got all sorts of different personalities. And as a referee, you're trying to work with those who will help you with the more challenging players. Um, and, and again, it's not always about confrontation. There's an awful lot of good stuff that goes on the field of play that doesn't go seen. The number of times players crack jokes as they're running past you or try and get into your head and all those different things. But as a referee, that's part of the fun of refereeing. It would be very dull if every game was the same and there were no characters on the pitch.
That's an interesting point in terms of where we're at now, and as the head of referee, and I guess what flavour of refereeing we're going to see more of in Northern Ireland as you have time to implement what you want. People are maybe afraid to have those interactions with referees. Are you still within reason able to banter back and forth with officials? Because I know obviously in certain leagues we see cards handed out anyone approaching a referee now.
I think there's a difference though, isn't there? One of the things that I've really liked about football here in this last 2 years is there's a really good relationship between the players and the referees. They see each other more regularly than they do in other competitions. They've known each other for a long time. And yes, when you go out on the pitch as a team you want to win, as a referee, you have a job to do. But still, you have that human relationship there. And I give credit to the playing and the managing side of the game that having talked about catch yourself on at the beginning of last season, from my perspective, I think that whole approach has been the players have bought into it. And they try now not to run at referees, not to mob and surround them, not to be visual in the comments that they make, so they don't undermine respect and authority. So all that good stuff is going on. And yet at the same time, there's quite a lot of good banter that goes on the pitch. And you can see referees smiling with players and vice versa. So we can't lose that human element. And we just need to keep working on the catch yourself on thing so that the referee retains their respect and authority. And actually, the bigger challenge isn't so much the Premiership and Championship, it's now making sure we cascade that through football in Northern Ireland.
I like when referees give a bit back, but is that something nearly trained out of you now? Because you have to be careful of where lines are, and people, one rogue comment could cost a match official.
It's difficult, isn't it? I think, and this is difficult for players as well as referees, that the way the world is now, everything is almost public. There's no such thing as a private conversation. So you have to be careful of what you say because you need to respect each other. But at the same time, if you know players and you know the types of conversation you're having, you've got remit within that to engage in discussions that help you both. And we've got some referees who are very good at doing that, and players who are very good at doing that. And we shouldn't lose it. It's the human part of the game. It's the stuff that makes us want to play and wants to make us a referee.
Louise, you must have heard some interesting comments from people that you played with and against when you all of a sudden are standing in the middle with the whistle and ultimately the influence on whether they're getting free kicks and penalties.
Yeah, you do. You do. Yeah, I think every referee is just going to expect that now in a way. We know that, but you can have matches where someone's having a go at you for 90 minutes and about every decision, and you're shaking your hand at the end of the game and going, sorry about that, so sorry. They know it's just part of the game sometimes, but yes, there is lines where it can't be crossed, can be crossed. But at the same time, you need to show that you're human too, have a wee bit of banter back. Timing, of course, is impeccable and stuff with that sort of thing. But yeah, you need to show that you're a person too.
That is sometimes what we see. Referees we almost don't realize that is a person at the end of all of our frustrations. Maybe the team we follow hasn't particularly performed, but instead we transfer a portion of that on to the person officiating the game. So that's, the catch yourself on, it made a lot of sense, I think, at the time to try and remind us all. You do need to remember you're shouting at an actual person who can hear you and has feelings. In terms of, because I'm sure for people that want to get involved, Louise, that's one of the things that maybe scare them. I don't know if I could handle that. Have you any advice for what it's like when you're starting out, how you do that, especially when you say initially you're reffing on your own too?
Yeah, it is honestly something that would be hard. But I think you need to have a good support network around you. Definitely there's other referees that we would talk to, just chat to them about whatever might have happened, that might have caused an issue, or just get their experience on it. But I think fundamentally, if you just, talk to someone, there'd always be somebody who would maybe phone on the way home in the car or something like that. Or, a wee bit of selective hearing too sometimes goes a long way. Can work. But yeah, you do need a thick skin. I think at the start it would maybe bother you, maybe game on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you're getting over it, and then you're thinking about your next game. Whereas now, you talk to someone about it on the way home, and yeah, you're trying to get over it by the time you've got home. You just learn to deal with it differently.
What's the most amount of games you've covered in a week?
I would say two. Normally like a Tuesday, Saturday, or yeah. Sometimes when the women's premiership was going on, there's that wee overlap. It used to be like a Wednesday night and a Saturday as well. So maybe a women's game on a Wednesday and a men's game on a Saturday. But yeah, two's enough.
I was going to say, we hear players complaining about multiple matches and the I guess, strain on their bodies. You're out there running about too. It's not the same for commentators. We're sitting on our bums. Yes, we have a bit of homework to do, but after that, we can sit and enjoy a burger or a coffee.
Yeah, it is. It's physically, but also it is mentally as well. You're trying to concentrate for 90 minutes. You're dealing with a lot of, yes, you've got people challenging you about decisions and stuff as well. So you're trying to deal with them, managing 22 people on the pitch plus benches. Yeah, it can be quite draining. So it does take you a couple of days to get back to your full self, I would say.
So one of Louise's other challenges as well is international matches. So it's not just a couple of trips around Belfast or further afield in Northern Ireland. It's travelling overseas day before the game. Could be 2 or 3 flights. Going to the stadium, training, morning of the game, pre-match meeting, preparing for the match, doing the game itself, then usually late afternoon, early evening finish, and then travelling all the way back the next day. Then 2 days later, you can be refereeing again over here. So there's all the other aspects involved in preparation as well. That being an international referee has greater impact on you.
How did you find that? I'm sure it's until you start experiencing it, Louise, probably nothing prepares you for it.
Yeah, no, nothing prepares you for it. It is the travel. We became international referees in 2020, so during COVID, which was also an added pressure because first of all, I didn't know what to expect going away, but also you had to do your COVID test before you went, waiting on your results, going through airports, at least 2 flights for us, most of the time 3. So you'd nearly start, you were traveling well over 12 hours a day. Then when you get there, you have your training session and your dinner. So it's a long, long day. So maybe a 3 o'clock start in the morning to maybe 9 or 10 at night. And then the next day doing a game and you're back out early the next morning for 3 flights. So if that's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you've got a Thursday and Friday and then a game on a Saturday. So it can be a lot.
Well, I'm getting tired thinking about it. So there's a lot more goes into it than just a match day, and I think that's a really good message to share more broadly with people. Maybe people aren't fully aware of that. Mike, in terms of what you have stepped into the role as head of refereeing here, what do you make about the general state of things at the moment? What did have you seen any change in the time you're here? And how would you summarize where we're at the moment?
I've been really impressed, and I've said this to the referees as well, that we look at how we perform round by round, how we perform over the season, and aim for a consistency across the group, so that when the players and the teams go out there on a Saturday, they know what to expect. So what our standard is and what each individual referee will do within that. And the thing that's impressed me most of all is the group's willingness to embrace new ideas, embrace change, but actually to drive themselves on. And if you came to our monthly meeting, in fact, you ought to come to one of our monthly meetings, Mike. You'd enjoy it.
I would like to.
Yeah. And you'd see one of the things people tend not to appreciate is just how honest referees are. We'll look at a series of incidents and the referee will go, yeah, got that wrong. This is why I got that wrong. This is what we can all learn from it. And out of that, we all try and make ourselves better as a group. And they've done really well at that over the course of the last 18 months. And then going out and delivering that on the pitch at the weekends as well. We will, inevitably, refereeing, we will always make mistakes. The game's fast-paced. There's situations that we can't all agree on at times. But our idea is to minimise those mistakes as much as possible and be as consistent as we can across the course of the season. And that's what we all try and do.
How does refereeing recruitment work within Northern Ireland? What pool of people can you pick from?
So interesting, we've just had a major recruitment drive over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks. So broadly, we started with around 700 referees throughout Northern Ireland. Our ambition is to turn that into 1,000 over the next 3 seasons. We've made a good start. We've recruited about 120 new referees at the moment. And working in each of the 4 areas of the country, we've got refereeing support networks, like Louise was talking about earlier on. So they're now picking up these new people into refereeing, taking them out on the pitch for the first time, training them in practical refereeing skills, giving them the support that they need. And you know that within those 120, there are future championship and premiership referees. So we've got to nurture that talent, develop it, give it opportunities. And it's why I said what I said at the start, that if you're thinking about refereeing at the moment, come be part of it, because the opportunities within Northern Ireland are fantastic, but equally the opportunities internationally are amazing in the men's game and particularly in the women's game. So it is worth, if you're interested, talking to us, because refereeing is actually a great life and a great way to be involved in football.
At the risk of asking a stupid question, I've asked more than a few of those in my career. Uh, If you were an ambitious referee outside of Northern Ireland who was way further down the pecking order, but felt that maybe this is where you could make your mark, would there be an opportunity for someone like that here, or does it have to be someone from within the Northern Irish refereeing community?
No, so you have to be registered as a referee, clearly in Northern Ireland, to be part of it. But we've got people from all over Europe in the refereeing ranks who've come into Northern Ireland for various reasons. Some referees beforehand and just transferred their refereeing registration over, some who weren't and then became referees. So that is a possibility. But it's one of the things I can't impress enough is that actually refereeing's for everybody, male or female, whatever your background. You can see in every country throughout Europe, it is a really broad church. And it's a great family to be part of. So genuinely, if you're even interested in the slightest, pick up the phone to either me or my team and come be part of that refereeing experience.
It's a good opportunity for us to just explain that then. So how do we contact you? What's the best way to register an interest?
So you can either go to your divisional associations. So if you look that up online, you'll see each of them, or come to us centrally. Um, so Mike Riley at irishfa.com is the easiest way to get hold of me. Or there's a generic referee department email as well, which is on the IFA website. Take any of those routes.
Okay, thank you for that. So pick up the baton and run with it, folks, if you think that that could be something for you. Um, what are you looking out for when you're trying to bring people through to be a referee? As you know, we think when we watch football, we can immediately say, "Oh, that looks like a player." What's the equivalent in the refereeing world? Oh, the way they blow their whistle, I can't imagine it's quite like that.
It's a big skill, blowing the whistle. Um,
You're marked on blowing the whistle, aren't you? Isn't that one of your assessment points? Is sort of
more broadly, it's communication. How do you communicate to the players and to the crowd that you make decisions? Which part of that is blowing your whistle, part of that's using your voice, part of that's your body language. So communication is a key part of what referees do. And clearly, if you can't blow the whistle, you can't stop the game because the players aren't listening you. So it is important. But it's fundamentally, I think you're looking for people with a passion for football. Um, you need certain skills, you need a fitness level, you need to understand the game, knowledge of the laws of the game. But all of those things we can help develop you and train you. If you've got that passion to be part of the game, and particularly a passion for refereeing, that will carry you an awful long way and make all the hard work that Louise talked about worthwhile.
and with the laws of the game, it's an undertaking, isn't it, Louise, to constantly be up to date with the latest interpretations and because things change quite frequently, even if they're like a nuanced change. I've been in the position before where there have been journalists, myself, fans confused by something, and actually the referees got it right. I shouldn't say that with such a degree of surprise, but sometimes we aren't always aware of what goes on. You have to be to the best of your ability. How tricky is that, and what does that look like in amongst your schedule as you've already outlined, all the travel and everything else?
Yeah, you're always keeping yourself up to date with the laws of the game. For sure, at the start of every season, there's always some sort of small tweak in a law or maybe a full change in something. So you need to definitely be up to date with that. I think also what I tend to do, but I'd say most of the referees would do it also, there is a website where you can just get a laws of the game test weekly and it just keeps your knowledge up to date. But also for me, it's just knowing them pretty much word for word. And within this recruitment drive, I've helped with being a referee instructor and just going over those laws all the time and having the correct wording of them. It helps you with your confidence. And if someone does challenge a decision, you can clearly say what it is, and then there's not as it's clear.
Because there's always that thing of what you might instinctively feel as a football fan watching a game versus the boundaries that you're officiating within.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you have the laws of the game, and then on the other hand, you have to have a bit of common sense also, and just try and do what football expects. But you have to be within the laws of the game within that also.
That's a well trained answer, I tell you, Mike. You must be proud of our top marks for that one.
But it's true of the referee life. Again, when I started, there were the laws were a lot simpler. They've become more complex over time. As around the world, you find idiosyncrasies in the law, and then all the lawmakers have to try and address those. So it is really important now for referees to be up to date in the laws of the game. And as much as you always want to come up with an answer that football expects, and people either watching or playing go, yeah, we think that's the right outcome, sometimes the law doesn't allow you to do that. And then you have to take unpopular decisions. So it's a constant challenge for the referee team.
It's something I sympathise very much with you guys for, because and I'm sure this makes me sound really fun at parties, I don't do it at parties, will try this at the beginning of every season as well, because inevitably something's going to happen in a match, and it's my job to try and make it make sense, and sometimes it's a bit confusing. So I can appreciate that you have to make a decision, and you have to make the right one. And as we know, there's kind of no sympathy generally when you make the wrong decision, which as an official you will do. It's a guarantee that you will make a wrong decision.
We're human. And again, you talked about that earlier in context of communication, but in decision making as well. And you know the speed of the game now, you know the complexity of it. And referees occasionally will make mistakes, usually because we get caught out of position and we don't actually see everything in its entirety. So you're actually on partial information. So we work hard on fitness, getting into the right position, making sure you can see everything. But inevitably, we'll get caught out by a great piece of skill or a great piece of fast play. We work really hard not to do that, but in many ways, it's like your star centre forward heading the ball over from 6 yards out when it was easy to score. Players are human, referees are human. But what we want is for the game to be as fair as possible, which means we need to get as many of the big decisions right as possible.
Now, respectful of your time, folks, but we've got our questions sent in by our listeners. If I don't ask these, I won't have another podcast. So I know what way my bread's buttered. So I'm going to go through these as quickly as I can. Mike, I think probably this one from Gary's for you. He's asking about technology. He's specifically asking about VAR Lite. Is it going to be introduced? And if so, when? Maybe just to add on to Gary's question, there's been a trial of a different approach, a challenge system of sorts. If I am allowed to have any sort of opinion, that feels like maybe an easier one to implement sooner, reduce cost. Am I wrong there? And what's your answer?
No, you're right, actually. You're right at the forefront of the debate at the moment. So when VAR was first introduced, I think everyone recognised that not every country can afford it. So IFAB and FIFA looked at VAR Lite, which was like a slimmed down version. I think over time, people have come to a realization that that's not really practical either. So we're now into a system called video review that FIFA are trialing in a number of their competitions, which is a very simple system, operates on somewhere between 1 and 4 cameras, and each coach is allowed 2 challenges during the course of the game. So if the coach challenges a decision, the referee will go over to the side, look at a monitor, and then make their judgment based on what they've seen at that monitor. A lot more slimmed down, a lot more cost effective. Still probably uses a few more cameras than we have currently in Northern Ireland. So if we were thinking about it, we'd have to scale up a little bit. But I can see for countries like us that don't have the resources to implement full VAR, that could be a way to go in the future.
Just to avoid any confusion, and not that you've created any, but it wouldn't be to replace VAR where it exists, but this is just an alternative for those who basically don't have the resources to implement it.
It is. It's a really cost-effective way, and we don't yet know the full cost of it because FIFA is still trying it. We don't know how many replay operators you need, what infrastructure you need, all those sorts of things. But I think in the next year or two, we'll get the answers to all those questions. VAR will carry on working in those competitions that can afford it. But for those who can't, video review is an alternative way.
We should have got Patrick Nelson on this call. Isn't he chairing the IFAB meetings?
He chaired it superbly as well. I was there.
Well, he'd be glad to hear another positive appraisal. See, the nice referees, folks. I feel like that's the takeaway from today. Louise, Babs on Twitter. Still people call Babs. That's brilliant. Why isn't more done, this is their words, to eliminate time wasting? A yellow card and injury time to a goalie makes no difference. That isn't aimed at you, but you're just going to be our spokesperson for time wasters. What can we do with them?
Yeah, it can be a tricky one, time wasting. what can we do? Well, we can punish them with the yellow card for the time wasting, or we can just keep adding on time. To be honest, it's probably the best way to deal with them. And then if something happens within that extra time that's on top of the extra time, it's their own fault, really.
Because, Mike, I think we all saw last season there was a real clampdown on it initially, and it felt like after a little while and a couple of high-profile ones, it all eased off again. Is there a happy medium somewhere to be found, or do you think we're getting it right where we are?
No, I think the game as a whole, it's probably one of the biggest challenges we've got over the next 2 or 3 seasons. And again, to come back and praise Patrick, because he's my boss, at the last IFAB meeting, we discussed all of that. And there's an experiment currently in a number of competitions where if the goalkeeper delays the ball, because the goalkeeper's got a great ability to absorb time, that if they hold on to the ball for more than the 8 permitted seconds, then the referee can award a corner kick or a throw-in level with the penalty area. And in the competitions that have experimented that, it's been really successful. Now, it will be interesting over the next year or so with other trials going to see how that works in practice and are there more things we can do to actually disincentivize people from wasting time in the first place that have a practical effect. Because if we can do that, I think we'll make big inroads into keeping the game free-flowing.
Brian, this one just made me laugh, so I nearly just wanted to mention it. I don't know if there's actually an answer to it. Why do refs never take the full 10 steps when placing a defensive wall? I saw one take 7. The average seems to be around 8. I'm assuming you're both going to tell me that it's 10 steps and you did it properly.
Well, I'm going to say it's 9.15 meters. So 10 yards in old money, because I'm ancient. And referees have different size legs.
Yeah, I get that a lot sometimes. Step it out and it looks it looks too far. I'm like, just look at the length of my legs.
But do you know what? There we are. That's a consideration that I wasn't putting in there. There's a science and a mathematical approach there. See, there's no stupid questions on the score, just a stupid host. Advantages. Marcus messages about advantages. He thinks that there's not enough advantages given at times in the Irish League. Could we see more, or is that unfair criticism, Louise?
Yeah, you okay, yeah, you want as much football played as possible. You don't want to be blowing the whistle on every free kick. So look, when you try and read the game, if you can play it, we try, we honestly try. Yeah, sometimes you can go a wee bit too quick with the whistle, but yeah, if it's there, we try fully. But yeah, sometimes it's there and it's not there. So there's a difference between playing an advantage or just letting football play from a free kick that you've, seen but not given as well. But yeah, trying to play it correctly it's mostly possible.
Have either of you ever celebrated a decision? There's obviously one in mind where you see a referee makes a call, maybe an advantage and it leads to a goal, and then there's that moment in all of us where we do something right and we go, yes, but it looks very odd if the referee does it. Have you ever accidentally fallen into that trap?
I think if we leave Mike to one side for a minute, and he's great, it was a fantastic advantage. There's no better feeling as a referee where you play an advantage and it really comes off. Go back to Jamie in the cup final, 93rd minute when it's 2-1. Liverpool really pressing for an equaliser last year, and there's a foul right on the edge of the penalty area at one end of the pitch, and he plays an advantage, and 10 seconds later the ball's in the back of the net and the other. You didn't see him celebrate, thankfully, but you know that inside you think, I've actually done something good that's contributed to the game here. It's a great feeling.
Quite a lot of people, and look, it's not a surprise when you bring up the topic of refereeing, Mike. People always want to see standards improve. Some people feel that they're nowhere near where they need to be at the moment, and they want to know is there a plan, whether it's a 5-step plan or anything in place to make improvements. I don't think I've ever heard a generation say that their generation of referees were the best, incidentally, and I'm mindful of that too to try to be fair with both of you, but people always want you to be better. So how do we give them that?
Well, we always want ourselves to be better as well. So you come into refereeing because you love the game of football and you want every game that you do to be a fair game of football where you've really contributed to it. At the same time, we know we're human beings and we will occasionally make mistakes. But as a group, what we're striving to do over the course of the season is be as consistent as possible, get as many decisions right as possible, and keep improving standards. And the catch-22 is always, whenever you improve standards, you raise people's expectations. But that's a good place to be, and that's what we want to do. And as I said earlier in answering one of your questions, the group worked really hard to try and achieve that. And if you saw this, we will definitely get you down to a meeting because you will see the spirit and the collective will to keep improving how we contribute to the game of football. But as I said, I think we're doing that from a good place.
Brilliant. Okay, I really do actually want to go to one of these meetings. But everyone's going to now be commenting saying you're very sad, but it is of interest to me. So, favorite moments. That's another one of the questions. Have you got a moment that for you was kind of your career mecca, the high point? Louise, we'll start with you.
Yeah, there's one that definitely sticks out in my mind. It was a few seasons ago. I got to go to the Women's Champions League, um, which was a fantastic experience at the Olympic Lyon Stadium. And they played against Benfica. It was just the whole atmosphere of the stadium itself, the build up, the light show beforehand. It was just one of those pinch yourself moments, to be honest. And that's something I really want to replicate again.
I guess having those sort of experiences as well only whets your appetite, doesn't it, in terms of further things you wish to accomplish?
Yes, definitely. You know it's possible. You've been there once, so let's hope you can just keep getting there. Yeah, but it definitely whets your appetite, and you know it's possible, and just the standard of football and everything around it in that environment is just top notch.
And Mike?
I think probably for me, the FA Cup final. Because in England, you only ever, or you used to only ever do that once. It changed slightly during COVID. And to know that you walk out, mine was at Cardiff, not Wembley, but to walk out when you've got all your friends and your family, and they've done so much to support you throughout your refereeing career, and know that they're there in the stand. So it is a great feeling.
2002 Arsenal Chelsea.
And in fact, two of the best FA Cup final goals, actually. Ray Parlour's curler from 35 yards, and I was stood right behind it watching it bend into the top corner, was superb.
Who gave you the most stick? I'm surely you're safe enough to answer this now. Out of all those Hallions in the Premier League, who was the one that gave you the most grief, whether it was jokingly or not?
It's interesting. I'll come at it in a different way because actually the players at Premier League level are entirely professional. And they know that by and large, when they're giving you grief, they're not concentrating on their job and they're going to get pain from the manager. So it's not that type of environment. The harder players to referee are actually the tricky players, the really skillful players. Because you need to know you've got yourself in the right position to see whether they've been fouled or not, or whether they've gone down easily to try and win a free kick. And that is more of a challenge than managing some of the discussions that go on the pitch.
And the play acting as well. You know, sometimes we need replays to go, oh, there actually wasn't any contact there, and it all happened so fast. Louise, I mean, it's everywhere now, isn't it? We're all influenced by what we see on television, and footballers, unfortunately, have picked up a few bad habits in the last decade or so.
Yeah, it is. The pace of the game has really, really changed also. Players are, yeah, getting into that more professional setup here. So let's just say they know what they're doing and they know how to maybe buy cheap free kicks and stuff like that. But yeah, it's the art of football now. It is there everywhere to be seen on TV and locally also.
And the very last question, I think you'll be glad to hear. Wayne wants to know who's the best up and coming referees. I know it's slightly putting you on the spot, but have you got anybody you want to shine a wee light on and say we think this person's doing particularly well?
Other than Louise Thompson, you mean?
Of course.
Again, it would be really unfair of me to say that, other than to say that we currently have a talents and mentors program. So we have 12 aspiring referees, all with the ability to progress at whatever level they're currently at. And that's working really well. The enthusiasm within that group and the work ethic is phenomenal. Hopefully now with more recruitment, we can expand that from 12 to 24 to however we need for the future. But there is talent out there. There is potential for developing refereeing in the future. And taking my tongue slightly on my cheek, people like Louise operating at the Championship now, there are several referees with the ability to come into the Premiership over the next 2 or 3 seasons.
And for people that are applying for this, can they decide, I don't want to say just, because sometimes people say that all the time. I think it's really unfair. They would like to be an assistant official as opposed to the person in the middle. I've never really considered this before until I was preparing for today, that there are some people who maybe just like running the line.
There are, and that's a good thing. I think when you first start off, you need to do both because refereeing gives you a good understanding of what you need to do as an assistant in future games to support the referee on the field of play. But when you come through probably to PIL level or so, specialising assistant referee at that point is a really good thing if that's what motivates you and inspires you, because it is a really dedicated skill that you need to perfect, completely different to refereeing. So why not specialise in it?
That's what I was thinking. You have to have a really good eye in a different way, don't you, for those marginal offsides? It's just it's a different challenge, and I'm sure, although you're not going to tell me who, there are very experienced referees who, if they were handed a flag on Saturday and told to run the line, would be going, "Oh, okay."
Well, there's a couple of examples in the Premier League where the fourth official has got on to run the line, and you can see the look of terror on the face when they pick that flag up.
Can I thank you both for your time? I've taken up enough of it for one day, but I really feel like we've learned a lot from it, and we've seen that there's opportunities there. It's great to hear that there's work going on in the background. It's sometimes and quite oftentimes an area where we don't hear a lot. We just see our officials who turn up at whatever team we support and whatever league we support, and we make our own assumptions from there. So it's good to know these are real people who are trying their best, and that there's more coming through, and that there's also opportunities available. So if you're a passionate football person, why not get involved? Mike's given you ways to do that. And who knows, it could be you in years to come, turning out in one of these big games and helping to make the big decisions and influence things. Mike, Louise, thank you so much for coming onto the score.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.